welcome to Win Championship Traits for Life, a show focused on strengthening the mental fitness of athletes, coaches, and anyone and everyone that works within a team on any level. I'm Lee Elias, that's JB Spizo, and we are joined today by Sargent Stu Edwards. Talent is an important part of any athlete's life, but the cultivation of that talent, along with a willingness to be part of a team, is essential for true winning to take place. Stu Edwards brings 17 years of experience in fitness coaching, performance coaching, and speaking to our show today. Stu started his journey at just 19 years of age as a gym instructor working in a local leisure center. It was there that he discovered his love for helping others achieve their fitness goals. He soon qualified as a GP Referral Specialist, working to physically rehabilitate clients with a range of physical and psychological challenges. Stuart's hunger for personal challenges only grew from there, leading him to enroll in the Royal Air Force to become a physical training instructor. Stu held many positions in the RAF, including training new recruits and pilots and delivering personal development in arduous environments in different countries to the future leaders of the RAF. Alongside his career in the Royal Air Force, Stu also works with sports teams ranging from recreational, semi-professional, professional, and international levels. In addition to serving his country, he also serves as the performance coach for the Peterborough Phantoms ice hockey team and has also served as a performance coach for Great Britain's under-20s ice hockey team for 2 world championships. In addition to his international resume, Stu also holds roles as a strength and conditioning coach with the English Ice Hockey Association and King's Elite Goaltending, which allows him to support and develop the future athletes of his country. Stu recently established Edwards Elite Performance, a coaching company with the mission of educating individuals and teams to improve their mental and physical performance to achieve their full potential. Stu, it is an absolute honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, again, the pleasures are. And, so the first question I want to ask you is about our personal relationship, because we do know each other. I first met you on a Royal Air Force base back in 2015, which seems like a long time ago now, when I brought the team I was coaching at the time, the Peterborough Phantoms, a team which you coach now, for a training camp stay. And you stood out immediately to me as both a leader and a person that would challenge the team to come together in the face of adversity. And I'd really love to get an idea of what that experience was like from your point of view. I know it was like from mine, because I know in the coming years, it kind of changed the trajectory of what you do as a performance coach. But like I said, I know the story from my brain. I want to get it from your point of view.
Yeah. So, firstly, it was the first impression of the team, and I suppose obviously the age range of the listeners. I'll use the correct and polite language. Is like, what the hell is this? I think the first time that I was introduced to them was, I think we did a circuit,
right?
And it was like just a bog standard kind of compound movement circuit. So there was burpees and all sorts of stuff in there, and I kind of thought, oh man, this is just what is going on here. They were just like lazy, they were complaining, they were like sitting down in between sets, and and I just got the idea that they were just too comfortable.
Right.
And I'll probably come back to the art of being comfortable, in uncomfortable situations. But it just, for me, it was just like, wow. Like, I thought these were supposed to be tough ice hockey players, and they're complaining because I've asked them to do exercise, So it was an eye opener from that point of view. But yeah, it was funny, and I remember saying at the end of the session, because we had the skirmish, didn't we? The day after,
right?
I said, right, you guys need to kind of think about how you're acting and how you're working as a team and how you're individually showing yourselves, because I said at the minute it's not a good impression, and I said if you bring that to the session tomorrow, you're in trouble, from that aspect. So yeah, that was my initial kind of thought process towards that situation. But yeah.
I'll tell you this too.
And then we moved on.
Yeah, no, it just, what I remember is exactly what you're saying. I remember thinking I made the right call in bringing them here, because this was exactly the message that they needed to get. And then, like I said, I don't know if you're going to go into the following day, but they did come together. It was impressive to see. Yeah, go ahead, because that was the whole point of us doing that, was to get them to this next level, which you totally did.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, a skirmish, or we call it green fizz, is you put coveralls on, so you're all, you all look the same. Because we expect the same from every single person, so there's no identity, and I remember saying to them, right, here's your coveralls, you got 3 minutes, and sent them in to get changed. And they came out, and it was interesting, to say the least. They were still wearing hats, like their coveralls were undone.
Yeah.
And so obviously, I have my ways of dealing with that, and they learned pretty quickly that they needed to sort themselves out. And I remember the conversation with you and Slava. I said, like, Lee, how hard do you want me to go on them? Because at the end of the day, they're civilians coming into a military environment,
Right.
So, and I remember Slava, I won't say the exact words he said, but he said, mess them up, because I think he understood that they needed a bit of a push,
Right.
to say the least. So we got into the skirmish, and then obviously it is pretty brutal from the start, and the whole idea is to get them out of this comfort zone and this situation where they're thinking too much, and I think there's when I say thinking too much, they still have a bravado, and they still have kind of a tough man mindset, where they feel as if they're too good to be there, or they don't understand why they're doing it, or that kind of thing. And I think when you get them in a situation where they are uncomfortable, and that every individual matters to that team, so their accountability, their responsibility. So for instance, we had them all lined up, and just simple press ups. I was telling them to count their reps, and then some of them were missing reps, but obviously I've been doing it for a long time, so I know, count some of the people's reps, and they were coming up short. So obviously it doesn't matter who it is, they all have to start again, and they all get corrective training, we call it, in order for them to understand that, if they don't act as they should, if the standards are low as an individual, then it's going to bring the whole team down. So yeah, there was that, and after that, it's they were uncomfortable from the beginning, and I think they got more comfortable with the fact that they had to rely on each other, and there was that teamwork, and then also you get that factor of fatigue. And as I always say, you will only understand someone's true nature when they're fatigued and their back's against the wall, because that's when they can't pretend. That's when they've got nothing else apart from their baseline personal standards. And then that was a bit more of a true reflection of themselves. They all pulled together. They all worked hard. There was, just the positives. It was a total 180. So yeah, and obviously my thoughts towards them was massively different after that skirmish session.
So I know JB's got a question too. I want to jump into the outcome, because it was pretty amazing what happened. So like you said, I remember the moment that switched, and it was actually towards the end of the training camp. But I remember during the skirmish, there was a kind of a one-on-one type fight type exercise they had to do. And they're hockey players, so I think that was somewhat familiar for them, having to kind of throw hands a little bit. But after that, there was a clear change in the demeanor, and that, hey, we got to do this together. And for the athletes and the coaches listening, I like that established before we even get on the ice the first time, or before we play the first time. It's not something that's super easy to establish during the season. But we ended that day. I'll without getting specific, I'll say that the members there gave us a gift from the RAF. I can't say what it was, but that gift stayed in our locker room for the entire season. And it was a constant source of, that's where we started. That's where we learned to play in a team. And on paper, unfortunately, we didn't have the silverware to show for it, but on paper, that was one of the most successful teams in the history of Peterborough from a record standpoint, from a win standpoint. And that continued from there, right? That standard that you had set. And I was always thankful for that. And like I said, that got kind of, I know from after that, it kind of turned you on to this coaching, performance coaching standard that, you've continued to do, but we'll get into that later. I want to make sure JB gets in the episode too. JB, sorry, it was a lengthy intro and first question, but you're up.
It was great. Great intro, Lee, as always. And Stu, glad to have you on this wonderful show. And,
Thanks,
I just love what you do for athletes. I spent a lot of time, I'm also, thank you for your service. I'm also a veteran too. And I did a lot of work with the Brits. I'll start off with a funny story. So when we were in Afghanistan, our strength and conditioning coach for our camp, we had a very, very small camp, about 150 men and women at this camp. And our strength and conditioning coach was a Sergeant Major from the British Royal Marines named David Silvestri. So they called him Tweety because he was giant, had this big bald head. And so he took over, he saw me training one day, goes, "Hey, Mike, why don't you train with me?" And I'm like, "Great, let's see how this is going to go." So after I threw up about, 4 times that first workout, I decided to get under his, training regimen. And I tell you, it was great. There were some things, just like you, he was also, a physical therapist. So, my back had hurt, my leg hurt, my knee hurt. So, he was rehabbing me as he was making me fit. And I tell you, it really changed my kind of, old Army Ranger thought process. So I think, exactly what you're doing for athletes. Sometimes we talk about quantitative and qualitative, just do more, just do more, just do more. Well, sometimes you have to do qualitative. You have to think outside the box and do it a little bit differently. So I just wanted to tell you that story to give you some context. But my question is, there's a lot, I think, and doing this as well too, like you and Lee do, there's a lot of similarities between a military, a platoon and a locker room. Obviously the outcome, you can't compare the outcome. Life and death, wins and losses. Okay. I'm not going there, but there's a lot of these same similarities, teamwork, selfless service, commitment to excellence, those sort of things. And I just wanted you to expand on that and what you've seen, that what works, what doesn't work, and go from there.
I'd agree, JB. It's exactly the same. What you're asking for is team standards, and I think that's, as an individual and as a team, nothing changes. Like you said, at the end of the day, either in sport you win or you lose, or in what we do, it could lead to the ultimate loss, but it's still the same. You're still asking the same, and I think a lot of people don't understand that, and I think they look at sport as a totally different thing, and it's not at all. It's all the good stuff, and business as well. It's exactly the same. You need everyone playing their own thing. What was the question again, JB?
Well, I just wanted you to expand a little bit on team chemistry and the importance of that in there.
Sure.
And I think sometimes even in sports or business, they want the boss to forge a team chemistry. They want the coach to forge a team chemistry. And again, the boss, the coach, the GM, they have to make sure it's healthy.
Yeah.
But I always feel it's a responsibility of the individuals inside that room to form that team chemistry, how you work with one another, right? I'll tell you, we would have a young man pass a special operations selection to get into our unit. And then all of a sudden the sergeants in the unit were reselecting him. And I was like, he already passed selection. Like, why are you reselecting him? What we need is his gun in the fight. That's what we need. So, and I think sometimes, you see that in business, whether, you're the new employee coming to a firm, or you're you're the rookie or new guy, or whatever you want to call it. So I just want to your experience on that.
From that example, I think it's the same. It's like you said, it's another selection sometimes when individuals are introduced to that kind of environment, and it's like, well, hold on, they've literally just passed the standard to be there. So the guys that have been there for years and years and years, this is your opportunity to learn and be current, because no one's more current than the last person that's through the door. So everyone needs to learn from each other from that point of view. And in a team, it's about selflessness, I think, and performing your role and having that responsibility and pride in doing your bit, and it's not always the gold star that you're going to get, but without that team environment, guess what, that major player or the best player on the team is not going to be able to perform to their best ability. So the best player on the team needs what could be considered the weakest, or I don't like using negative language like that, but you understand what I mean. They need everyone. So yeah, I think that's for me, is that is that team environment. Everyone plays a part, and without it, there can't be a good outcome. So.
No, and I think that's it. Whether it's in the military, the objective's clear. Like we have to win or lose, and the losses are very grave. But and I think in sports, it's can we be a champion? And Lee, you probably know better than me. I just saw the stat on Patrick Marleau. 1,300 and some games and no Stanley Cup, right? Like, right. I mean, I think sometimes when people look at it, like you only have, in sports, you only have a very few opportunities to be a champion, and you should try to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think too, when you're looking at teamwork, I try and establish that early on in my locker rooms as well, as that, again, Stu, I don't like to use the word weak either, but the player that's the farthest behind is still part of the team. And what are we doing as a team to help him get better? And it doesn't always come down to time on the playing field or the ice or letters on a jersey. It's what are we doing to improve them? Because if he improves or she improves, the whole team improves. And just creating that mindset is very important. Look, winning, we talk about this on the show all the time. Winning is really, really, really hard. It is really hard to do. It's awesome to do, but I often find people are not realistic about what it means to truly win and what it takes to win. And we again, a reoccurring theme. Tactics and talent have to be there to do that, but so does a team bond. And I've never been part of a team ever, and I don't think it's ever happened, that didn't have that last aspect, right? And the teams that take the time to build that typically succeed. I'll say this too from my own experience. I have always idolized military people. Again, you both have volunteered to be part of the military. The military practices this more than anyone else on the planet, and in turn, they are the best team on the planet by far. It's not even close. So I always tell coaches and businesses or whoever I'm working with in a team environment, if the military practices this, if they're the best team on the planet and they practice this often, what does that tell you? Because the idea of, we're already a good team. The best team on the planet still does it all the time. What does that tell you? Do the math on that one, right? It's not something you can just snap your fingers and it's done. And I've said this, and then JB, I want you to jump into your next question after this, but I've said this before. Look, I can create a team bond in one day easily. I can get any group of people to work together for a day. It's just not hard, all right? Maintaining that is very hard. And that is the key, is that it has to be touch point and nurtured. I use that word on purpose. Every single day. That's why the military does it all the time. So if you have a great training camp, and Stu, again, your work with the team continues, that's great. It's a good standard to set, but to maintain the standard is the key. Because the players if you're doing ice hockey, the players in February are not the players from October. It's a very different person at that point. And you got to make sure that the team is there because they're hurt, they're injured, they're tired, they're irritable. There's a lot on the line. They probably want the season to end. You know, the weather's getting warmer. I'm speaking specifically for hockey. If that team bond's not there right there, if there's not a reason to get through it together, you're going to fall apart. And I've seen that so many times, right? You get close and then it just falls apart. So anyway, JP, go ahead with the next question before I just.
No, and again, the gap between average and elite is so small.
Totally.
And elite and to be elite, you have to do that over a period of time. You need sustained performance, right? You can come out and do it once and do it all great, right? You know, flash in a pan. But to be elite, you have to sustain that performance over and over again. You know, Stu, I just wanted to ask you from your, you know, we all, again, Sports Center moment in the U.S., you know, everything's great. Oh my gosh, look at this. But I think it's important to, you know, if you could expand on one of your experiences in life where you met adversity, where you were knocked down, and how you got back up and share some of these, because I think that's so important. You know, winning is great, but I think winning is a byproduct of loving the battle. And I think, you know, I'll tell you from my experience, I've learned more from being knocked down than I did from, you know, drinking out of the Stanley Cup. So I think those are important. So maybe you can expand on and share with our listeners some of your techniques or things that just happened to you.
Yeah. So like there's quite a few that come to mind, and it's not to say that, you know, I've been my life's been adverse by any chance, but you always remember those moments. And I always talk to teams about the fear of failure. Okay, so I was very anxious. I used to have performance anxiety, and it would basically cloud my ability to do what I love doing, you know, or what I wanted to do. So it was on the physical training instructor course. Now already to be selected for that in the RAF, there was 15 spots and 1,000 people were interviewed for those positions, you know. So already, like, you know, I've achieved to be there, you know. I say achieved, then you've then got to go through the course. But to be selected for that is a huge thing, you know, especially in my area. No one had ever been selected for that before. But that pales into insignificance if you don't believe in yourself, you know, and I didn't. So I was on this course. So we went through basic training, which I think is 8-10 weeks. I can't remember what it is. And then on the PTI course, so the other guys that were on that course, it's an 8-month course where you can be basically asked to leave at any point. You know, it's hard. You're doing degree level, you know, anatomy and biology, as well as being fizzed 3-4 times a day, you know, and you're constantly being tested. But the guys I was on there with, we had an ex-Marine, semi-pro boxer, semi-pro footballer, you know, and the list goes on and on. All these guys that I thought, you know, what the hell am I doing here? You know, I don't deserve to be here. So I think I probably got about 3 months into the course, and I was just a grey man. So I was just, you know, the instructors probably didn't know my name. You know, I was just literally doing it. And on a course of 15, you know, that's difficult to do. I managed it because it was the fear. It was a fear of failure, of proving to myself that I wasn't good enough, I think. And I know a lot of young athletes go through the same process, you know, of that fear of failure. And the reason why I say this is, so I'd gone through and we had to do teaching techs, which, you know, we'd take a class of guys, you know, SACs normally, which have been in for a bit. So you're a trainee PTI going into that situation where these guys don't want to be there. You know, they're just there because they're told to be there, and, you know, they're not interested in fears. They just have to do it. So, but I'd made loads of mistakes. You know, I'd forget to do demos when I started. I'd forget to do certain things, you know, because I was so fearful of failing, you know, and I wasn't showing any personality. They were all rubbish lessons. You know, I might have passed a few, but, that was more luck than judgment. And, it was because they couldn't fail me because I made sure that everything was, I remember setting up for an 8 o'clock lesson at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was that worried about it. So anyway, it got to this point, and one of our staff instructors called Scotty Fuller, he'd obviously seen this happening, seen that I was just, not showing any personality or I was making stupid mistakes. And he said, right, the next person to make a mistake has to sing, right? And obviously I was so worried about it, I made the mistake, right? So we had a blue gym at Cosford, okay? And at that point, there was probably over 100 trainees in there, okay? And he said, right, you have to stand on that bench and sing, right? And I had that moment where I had to make a decision. Do I refuse to do it and probably be hampered for the rest of that course and probably don't pass out on that course, or do I go for it? And I tell you, I went for it. But I believe, I sang "I Believe I Can Fly," and I absolutely went for it. But it's that moment, and I always look back at that moment where if I hadn't have sang, if I hadn't have gone for it, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. And I think that's the most important thing. And after that, I didn't look back. I passed everything, and I showed personality, and I was joking, and I was myself, and I could do things that I couldn't do before because that fear had gone. Because believe me, if you're standing on a bench in front of over 100 trainees singing "I Believe I Can Fly" as loud as you can, and putting on a great performance, I'd like to say, and you can do anything. And from there, that was it. And I think that's, for me, that was the biggest adversity that I had to get through at that time. Obviously, later on in the career as UJB, you understand, that military aspect, you have to go through different adversities and that kind of thing. But I think at that point, if Scotty Fuller never made me sing, I don't think, like I said, I'd be here today.
And great for Scotty Fuller to do that. And yeah. I imagine when you're going through the course, as a candidate going through the course, you might say, this instructor's crazy. Like, what's he even doing? Why is he embarrassing me? And, there were times that when I was an instructor, we would do things like that as well too. I remember, calling the quietest cadet out in front of the formation to sing cadence, right? Yep. As we were running. And all of those things. But good for Scotty Fuller to push you outside of your comfort zone. And what did you do? You rose to the challenge. So I think that's the lesson right there. When a coach or a boss or a teacher or somebody pushes you out of your comfort zone, instead of, you had a chance right there, Stu, right? Fight or flight. And you said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And and you stepped up there. Great story, Stu. I love it. I love it.
Thanks.
Through the majesty of song as well. Another thing I want to impress to the listeners and the watchers is that a message that I don't hear enough in locker rooms, aside from it being just, hey, it's okay to fail or fall as long as you learn, right? But it's this don't fear failure mentality. Right. Mm-hmm. And in the most successful locker rooms I've ever been in, and JB, you could probably speak to this too. Coaches encourage creativity. All right. And failure is always possible when you do that. But the best athletes and the best teams know that if you fail, it's how you respond. Keeping in mind too, like you don't want to make the same mistake over and over and over again. That's a big key of this. I always say to my players, like, you can fail once. That's going to happen. You fail the same thing 6 times. I have to make a decision. All right. But you can't fear it. When I look at my own life and the trajectory that my own life has taken, every major twist or turn was born from a massive failure, right? Depending on how you define that word. It was a massive change, or I lost something, or I did not succeed at something, completely moved the trajectory. And JB, you just said it. It's a flight or fight moment, right? So for especially the athletes listening to this, look, fear is part of it. Fear is part of sports. You're going to feel it. Right. And here's the other thing too. This is something we don't say enough. You're going to fail. It is 100% chance you will fail. Right. It's the choice you make how you fail. and what you do after you fail. Stu, as you said, if you're fearing it, you're going to continually do it. If you embrace it, and I really mean that word, embrace your failure and rise to the challenge and change, that's when you start to see growth at a really quick level. Again, JB, I'm sure you've seen a ton of this, right? Especially at the highest level.
Well, Lee, correct me here, but I'm pretty sure Crosby didn't make that Olympic team as an 18-year-old, right?
Yeah, he missed something. He's one of the last people.
They left.
Yeah.
No, they left. Yeah, they left.
Yeah.
They left him off. Look at that. Now you think back and you're like, wait, what?
Right.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? And so, all part of that, this adversity is what makes us better.
Right.
And without, look, if you never have adversity, you'll never have resilience, right? If your life is just so good, you never have any adversity. What do you need resilience for?
Mm.
But then with that, right? And then with that resilience takes perspective, because then you have to think about, okay, was that because of me? Did that happen? And then from there, you can focus on how to get better at it. So it's so full circle. And you're exactly right. That's why the military puts people into, adverse places. Now, I'm not saying that, everything should be like the military, because, in business, even in sports, you're picking people because they're talented. Stu knows. We can teach people to shoot. We can teach people to navigate. We can teach people to swim. We can teach people fitness. But there are just some inherent capabilities that you come with. So if you're a leader, whether a coach or a business professional, and you're not allowing people to be creative, which you said, Lee, which I think a lot of coaches and business people don't do. They want people to fit inside their box.
Right.
But if you don't allow people to be creative, then you'll never see that talent come to bear. Right. And Stu, your instructor got you out of your comfort zone. So he saw your talents come out. And then you said, I was a different person. I was a gray man. I was hiding in the middle. Then your talents came out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to that leadership thing as well, it's if a leader is so worried about letting their players flow and be that creative and take risks, then they're the ones that are fearing failure.
Right.
And unfortunately, teams can't play under those conditions. You can't ask a player to do something over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and for them to be able to do it to their best ability every time. They need to be let loose and be able to have that creativity, because that's how they learn. So if you're forcing them to do the same thing over and over and over again because you don't want them to lose or to make a mistake, they're going to make a mistake anyway, because they're not going to be thinking about it. They're just, they're going to be bored, and yeah, I think that's a big thing about leadership as well that I've always seen is, leaders need to fail as well. Right. In order to understand, because again, I've been on so many things, IoTs out in the middle of nowhere, when the rain's coming down and the weather's terrible and you can't see anything, and they're taking 25 minutes to read a map. And you're like, right, we've stood here for 25 minutes getting rained on. What's going on? And they're like, well, we're not quite sure. It's like, well, come on, like, why is it taking 25 minutes to do something that you could do in 2 minutes? It's because their fear of failure has driven them to do things that would never do before, and I think it's important, and a massively important lesson for people to understand. It's okay to fail. People are going to fail, and like you said before, with no failure, there's no productivity. There's no, creativity. You're not going to get anything. You are going to lose at some point, and it's how you come back from that. That really makes a difference.
Stu, I think. Go ahead, JB.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I just think one of the simplest 2 words you can teach a young person that's maybe thrust into a leadership position and not sure what to do, whether business or sports. The U.S. Infantry uses the motto "Follow me,"
right?
and sometimes you know, there were many times I was like, follow me. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And, but you're figuring it out as you go. And I think sometimes that's the best practice, right? Just follow me, figure it out as you go. You'll make some mistakes. If you turn left, then turn right, you know, figure these things out. And that's, you know, we should inspire that. We should do that. We should continue to inspire people to, again, make mistakes, learn a new path, figure it out. And I think sometimes we try to be a little bit too much X's and O's in business and in sports. Do this, it gets you this, do this, it gets you this, do this, it gets you this. When we should allow those people's talent to come out. All yours, Lee.
Yeah, I will follow that up with a tremendous story, because we're going to turn back into hockey in a minute here, Stu. But I got a great hockey story that you were involved in. You know, when I arrived in Peterborough, the organization, let's just say they were not a high class organization. They were towards last place in the league. Very little standards, very little belief. Just you know, a perfect scenario for a team builder to walk in. Not going to lie. And the captain at that time, who has since retired, his name was James Ferrara. All right. And I could tell there was something there. He was the captain. He was from the city, like, you know, which is rare. Like the captain's from the city. He was also a school teacher and he's playing pro hockey. And I'll just say, you know, he wasn't old, but he was getting towards the latter half of his career. And I remember I went to talk to him and I said, well, what has the team done to enable you as a captain? And I think he said something like, well, they put a C on my chest. And that was about it. And I realized he had never been enabled as a leader, ever. Just they put the C on his chest because it looked good. And what we did was, from the coaching staff down, we really enabled him to be a leader, to be a two-way communication piece between the team to the coaches. We told him things like, if you can handle a team situation, handle it. It doesn't always have to come back to us. That's why you're the captain. And you know, in the few seasons I was there, and again, Stu, you worked with him, he evolved as a leader very fast. And again, he's not the talkative type. He's very much more the lead by example type. And he's also the type, when he did say something in the locker room, everyone stopped to listen. But he really turned it on as a leader. And what I love about what we were saying is that, you know, he got to a point where he wasn't afraid to fail, in my opinion, because he knew his teammates would be there for him. And I think that that's one of the things about leadership that, especially in youth athletics, coaches and even captains don't understand. The C, or captaincy in general, does not mean you're infallible, right? It means what JB just said. Follow me. I might make a mistake, but follow me, because I know you have my back and I have your back. And he did that better than anybody else on the team. And he was always setting the standard. He was always the right person for it. But no one had ever enabled him to do it beside putting the C on his chest, right? Again, hockey's a little bit of a unique sport where, you know, we put the C on the chest. Football's kind of adopted it recently. American football, Stu, sorry. Hand egg, as you guys call it sometimes. All right. But it's one of those things of, you know, the captain is only as powerful as he's enabled to be. And it goes both ways. The coach is only as enabled as the captain makes him. So leadership is insanely important right now. And I'll be honest, it's something that's lacking, at least over here on this side of the pond, heavily right now in sports, in business, and overall. Right. So I think that's something, if you guys want to comment on that before I jump into the next question, because I just talked again for a while, but great captain, Jimmy Ferrara. I got to say that. He was amazing.
What do we do in American sports is we pick the best player and we put a C on their chest. Right. And then sometimes we don't give that player the training, the leadership, the mentorship that's required. And I think sometimes that's the issue. Some people then evolve into it, but some people, again, they need help with it. And then, of course, it can be just, it can almost be a leadership group, the assistant captains, people that aren't wearing an A. Right. And I think sometimes that's when the best teams are formed, when there's that little bit of reading the tea leaves. That captain can say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. Or the captain, I watched Willie Mitchell, the team needed a day off. He was the captain of the Panthers. He walked in, he sat with Turk. He said, Turk, we need a day off. And we were a little bit of a streak that wasn't going very well. And he's like, Turk, the guys need a day off. And Gerard said, okay. He gave him a day off. But that was the captain realizing it. But then he came into the team and said, okay, we got tomorrow off, but guess what? Thursday, hey, we're all back here ready to go, that sort of thing. But it's that development. And I think sometimes, we just think that leadership, you're naturally born with that talent. And again, some of that can be imprinted. You're not. It's a learned trait. That's why the West Point Military Academy is 4 years long, because we're trying to develop a great officer. So.
Yeah. I always find as well, like a big thing for captains or leaders is that ability to ask for help.
Right.
I think that's a big thing that people, they're like, oh, I'm the leader, I've got to know everything. I've got to do everything. I've got to be everywhere. And it's just not the case. And not only that, if a captain or a leader asks for help from somebody on that team, you're enabling that person to show their qualities, and you're without probably thinking about it, producing another captain, another leader. Right. And by asking for help and doing that. And I think we've all got our positives and our things to work on, and I just think we can't know everything, and leaders can't know everything at the same point. So why not use people on your team that do know what they're doing or have those qualities, and then the whole team can benefit from it, rather than you trying to do it because you're supposed to be the captain. Well, you've got people underneath you that can do it just as well, if not better, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of your job, is to enable those people underneath you, not underneath you, should I say, working with you, right, in order to do that. So
and one of the most honorable things as a leader, and especially as you climb the ladder, is when you make a mistake, just be like, my bad.
Absolutely.
Right? Like it's listen, on me, my fault.
So
and
JB, I've got so many examples of that. I've walked for 2 days straight in the wrong direction, as an instructor, because I'm not there to tell them otherwise. I'm there to, facilitate, make sure they don't kill themselves in these environments, So I've walked for 2 days on a wrong direction in order to prove a point that they were too stubborn to ask for help from the rest of their group. There's 7 of us all together, 2 days straight. Didn't get where we were going. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't ask for help. Hey, that's not my point, my problem. My problem is to facilitate the whole thing. And believe me, it was a long conversation. So and it's just the way of, if there's any leaders or coaches or, captains out there, don't be afraid to say you've got no idea what you're doing. I mean, obviously, if you do it over and over again, there's even more questions to be had. But and if you don't know, find out. Because, really, like I said, I'm quite happy to walk on a wrong bearing for 2 days, but I'm not willing to do it for a whole season.
No.
So
and Stu, you're way more patient than me, because me as an instructor, I'd have given him about 7 minutes and be like, "Hey, crazy, you're going the wrong direction." But that's exactly.
I don't know, JB, 2 days. That's pretty good.
That's good. I was like, I'd have gave him 7 minutes. That's about it. But
he learned
so much learning.
They learned the lesson.
100%. There's so much.
They learned the lesson that, if I would have stopped him after half an hour, we've lost half an hour. It doesn't matter. If you lose 2 days, believe me, that's going to stay with you.
Right. Yeah. Right. That might be the American English translation there. You guys we're talking about accountability here, and it's so important that we teach that in our locker rooms and our businesses. And just going back to the one thing you said previously, Stu, is I remember when I was a freshman in college, I was playing college hockey. I think I just turned 18 or 19 years old. And our captain was a senior. He was 6'5". His name was Eddie Caldwell. And we were going into the playoffs. And I'll never forget this moment. I just happened to be in the locker room. He was getting interviewed before a playoff game. And the interviewer said, you're the captain of the team. How are you going to lead this team to the next round? And it was the simplest thing. He said it, but it really stuck with me. He says, listen, I'm the captain, but I need everyone on this team to be a leader tonight if we're going to win. And like you said, I felt enabled. I felt like, wow, he needs me to be a captain too, even though I don't have the letter on my chest. That was a very important lesson for me at that age, right? And again, going back to Jimmy Ferrara again, so he has since retired. And I actually am aware of who the new captain of the team is going to be. I can't say yet because it hasn't been announced, but I do think that this person saw that standard. Stu, I think you know too. He saw that standard, and I know this person, and I know the changes that he's making to meet that standard because it's very, very big skates to fill. Jimmy Ferrara, okay, and that goes back to what you were saying about leaders teaching other leaders. You're almost always teaching your replacement. But when full accountability is there, that's not really a problem. That comes with it. Stu, I do want to keep moving here. Also, we'll never end this episode because we could talk for about 6
minutes. Hang on, Lee. I do want to say something though. But this new captain, this new captain, he shouldn't worry about being Jimmy Ferraro.
Totally agree.
This new captain.
He won't, JB.
Yeah. Well, no, there you have it.
Oh man, I hope he watches this now.
Wow, but this new captain should just be himself.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're all different. We're all different leaders, and it's okay. And Alexander Barkov is a different leader than Willie Mitchell is.
Right.
So, but it's okay. And so, you have to, the worst thing you can do as a leader is try to be somebody you're not, because you're not authentic. People will see right through it. Stu, if you stood up in front of a platoon and you were like, I'm this, they're going to be like, yeah, whatever. Okay. So the best thing a leader can do, especially a young leader, just be authentic, be who you are.
No. And JB, I actually appreciate you correcting me on that. Because I did insinuate that, and I didn't mean to, but you're 100% right.
I wasn't correcting you.
You're right. But Stu's right too. This young man will be himself. He has no problem with that. So Stu, keep it on the hockey side of things. In recent years, we've seen Great Britain's national team qualify to play at the top level of the World Championships. You guys have won medals with teams you've been a part of. So GB is an emerging hockey nation. Okay. So I want to kind of set the stage a little bit for our listeners here. Like if you're in the United States, Canada, ice hockey is something we're known for. Even if you don't watch it, it's a top 4 sport. We're always in a medal round in the Olympics. Great Britain is not known for that. But as I said, in the last few years, they've gotten to that top level of competition. They're playing the United States. They're playing Canada. They're playing the Czech Republic, and they're new to it for the most part. So Stu, what are the challenges and benefits of being part of an emerging hockey nation? Because I think that's a perspective that a lot of our audience won't understand.
I think from my point of view, identity, I think, is one of them. Obviously, it's natural to look to those kinds of teams, and see what they're doing in order to try and bring ourselves up to that level. So it's hard to have your own identity. There's countless discussions on, what are the Americans doing, what are the Canadians doing, all this stuff, and I think that's great to a point. The standard, obviously that's the standard you aim for because they're the best teams. However, we need to remember where we're from and what we do, and I think you can't, it's like going back to that leadership thing. If you're not authentic with who you are, then you're going to fail, to a point. I think also, as you said, we've got loads of, issues, and the point that, we don't have as many rinks available. Ice time is incredibly expensive, and I just think the development side of things is also lacking still, and it's also financially difficult because it's not a major sport, so the finances aren't there, so you're relying on individuals to give up their own time and not necessarily be able to pay them. And as that's fantastic for those coaches because they're getting hands-on experience and all that, but are these the guys to push the team forwards? Not always. Obviously you're gonna unearth some gems, but in that, you're not going to get the coaches that will make a true difference to a team, I think also it's difficult from acceptance point of view, especially for people in our line of work. I think we've probably all had those experiences where you kind of been asked if you could be involved, but like the coaches aren't really understanding what you do or why you're there, or or what benefit you give. And I think that's also a thing where it's difficult, because a lot in this country especially, we've got people in high up positions that used to be good ice hockey players because they did it the old school way, but it's not that time anymore. It's 2021, and I always liken ice hockey to rugby union in this country, and obviously for some listeners that won't understand that. So probably 25 years ago, rugby used to be played by big fat guys who just drank beer at the weekend and just liked banging into each other, and having a good time, and that, and even it wasn't there at a professional level. They weren't professionals. They were just like I said, these out of shape guys that just like carrying a ball. But now, it's night and day. Like, if you look at the professional rugby players now and the professionalism that's around the sport, because it's faster, they're stronger, they're more professional. They look at different things. They, no stones unturned with strength and conditioning, mental, the mental side of it, and also that build up of that player development from a young age. It's all there now, and that's where ice hockey is still 25 years away from that.
It's the same in the US though too, Stu. I mean,
yeah,
the US is ahead, and we're making changes, but the US is still, even though we have 600,000 registered kids playing hockey. It's still very, very expensive. We haven't found a way to, there are programs, try hockey for free, that sort of thing, but we haven't found programs to get certain groups into hockey at a steady pace. And even at our professional level, we're still behind strength and conditioning, that sort of thing. Where some of our other sports have been better. Our American football.
JB, you've still got teams here, people that have been paid to play hockey in this country still aren't doing strength and conditioning. And you're paid athletes.
Wow.
Like, you've got guys that turn up to games that are, maybe been out the night before, or maybe they've not eaten what they should have done, and you're like, you want to be paid to play a sport, and you are privileged to be paid to play professionally in a sport. Man, how can you turn around and not prepare yourselves for everything? But that's unfortunately still one of the buffers that you've got to go against, is that you're asking these people to do something that they've never done before because they feel they don't need to do it. Because they're already getting paid to do it. So why should they change what they're doing? And that's what the problem is, And I mean, I know I've gone on about the things that we need to work on, but on the positives, it's starting to turn a little bit where we're getting more kids playing, and that idea, and the ball is kind of rolling with, like, the IHA introduced a strength and conditioning team, which I'm a part of, in order to try and develop that in new coaches that are coming through, how important these things are. And obviously from my performance coaching side of things, I was lucky to have Slava that would just allow me to do this stuff and trust me to do that stuff. But believe me, there's not many coaches out there in this country that would, so that's kind of what we're dealing with, and it's an uphill battle. But like I said, with what's happened at the World Championships and everything like that, there's a huge draw for that kind of things, and obviously Kirky, flying the flag. We want to produce more Kirkies, but unfortunately we don't have that at the moment. We can't produce them. Kirky's just come along, and he's one of those players that would have just been great anyway because of his personal traits. He always wants to be better. He's always asking questions. He's got the right mentality, but we're not producing those at the minute. So we're kind of at a lull where we've got all these players now in the team, but nothing really underneath them. And I think that's also where all those issues that I've kind of brought up is the problem.
No, it's just some context for everybody listening. So the people we keep talking about, Slava is the head coach of the Peterborough Phantoms, a team that both Stu and I have been involved with. And he's a brilliant tactician. And I've always said that the thing I appreciate most about Slavs is that he understood the need for this. And I think he knew that he might not be the right person to do it. So he's always outsourced that, but he knows he needs it. That's a big key. And then Kirky is Liam Kirk, who has just actually signed a contract with the Arizona Coyotes of the NHL. And I think he is the first English trained hockey player ever to be drafted into the NHL. So it's an emerging hockey nation, right? And there's some pieces that are moving correctly and some pieces that aren't. And Stu, I'll just tell you, this is kind of a motivation and inspiration. When you look at any industry, any sport, the people that pioneer it don't know they're pioneering it at the start. And you're one of those people. When I look at radio, when people 100 years ago saying no one's ever going to listen to people talk through a box, right? But when you look at the pioneers of radio, they did it. When you look at television, the first people on. When you look at Wayne Gretzky, right? He'll never make it. I mean, you hear the story about Wayne Gretzky as a kid, people were rooting against him actively, and completely changed the game. So I just think not only it might be taken 25 years, but you specifically are 25 years ahead, right? And you're the pioneer that's going to make other people see that. And it might not be obvious right now, but it is going in the right direction. It's just never as fast as any of us, especially the three of us, want it to go. But like again, one of the best pieces of advice Slava ever gave me. This is funny because it's going to come full circle now. I remember I was really upset at one point about the way we played, and he goes, Lee, coaches always are the worst at following their own advice. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, you're always telling the guys don't feel failure and to be accountable. He's like, are you doing that for yourself right now? And it was a explosive moment in my mind. I was like, man, he's right. He's completely right. And I want you to know, like I said, you're doing that in a good way for your country. You are creating the future leaders in sport, right? Which is also happens to be your job in the RAF, which is hilarious, but you're doing that, right? And I told you, you had some time with Liam Kirk, and I think you said something like, I hope if he even remembers something I said, I guarantee you that he does, right? It's those little moments I can think back, real quick, sticking on the Phantoms, because we were talking about the Phantoms. I think it was in 17 or 18 while you were working with the team, they had a treble season. For those of you stateside, treble means they won 3 championships in 1 year. That's typical of English sports, having more than one championship. But you won a treble. It's incredibly, incredibly hard to do. I don't want to, I can't stress that enough to the audience. It is insanely hard to win once, much less time twice, much less times 3 times in one season. You were heavily involved in that team. I want to know, how did you approach working with the teammates and the players and everybody to keep a bonded atmosphere throughout the season? We did talk about this earlier in the show. And I want to know the tactics you had to keep them together through all of that, because one thing I know about winning is when you do it once, you get hungry, but you can relax. This happens a lot. A lot of teams relax. They go, we got the one. This one won 3. How do you go about doing that?
I think good captains make things easy, and without going on about Jimmy Ferrara again, there was that group was there was some really good senior players, and they didn't allow the standards to drop. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that everyone was accountable, everyone had their responsibility, and they knew it. And I think that's the best thing, is to understand, be crystal clear about what every single person on that team, what standards they need to live to. And I think that's for that team. I think that was the major thing. There was things where, obviously my time with the team, I come in and out due to the day job, but we'd be at games and the door would get shut and the coaches would be in another room, and what's going on in that room, and it's the senior players taking that responsibility to keep the standards high. And I think that's the biggest thing. After that, you just come in and review a few things and do, and work on that. I think, Lee, like you said before, so long as that seed was planted, and let's face it, the seed, was planted for that team way before that season, and it was just a continuation, and then everything clicked. The talent clicked, everyone else's mentality clicked, and I think that was it. It was just a special group of players, But like I said, that seed was planted way before that season, and I think that's important.
One thing I'll say, and Stu, I don't even know if you know this about that team, but one thing that I appreciate you saying that about the seed being planted. The season prior, this is what I remember, because that was my last season in the UK before we had to come back stateside, right? Because that's where the military is in this. What a lot of people don't remember about that treble team is the year before we came in second 3 times. 3 times. And I remember Jimmy Ferrara, a guy we keep talking about here, came to me at one point. It was just actually a painful memory, but I'm glad that it happened because the result is clear. He kind of turned to me and he had this kind of quizzical look on his face. And he kind of said something like, man, we could have been legendary. Like we could have done this thing. And it was in that moment he realized probably what it would take to do it. Like he understood from losing what it would take to win. And lo and behold, the following season, they go out there and do it. Right. But we talked about failure as a tool for winning. Like they had to go through that. They had to go through winning and then losing. Coming in second's tough. Doing it 3 times in 1 year is almost torture, for lack of a better word. But that is from that the flame there, they or the ashes, that's how they learned to win the treble. And I guarantee you in the locker room, like you were saying, that was the messages. He didn't want to let that opportunity go again. Keeping in mind, at that point, he's towards the end of his career. You know what I mean? He knows what's coming. So it's all part of a process. You know what I mean? And like you said, the seed was planted, and then all that experience in between bred that treble winning team. And again, man, three championships in 1 year is an accomplishment, and a major accomplishment. Anyway, JB, go ahead.
No, wonderful. And you're exactly right. It's so tough to be a champion, and then it's so tough to repeat, and so on and so forth. And I think what you said, Stu, you lean on the cap, and I think that's why, Tom Brady's been so successful and people want to play with him, because he has this, this desire to win. There was a report that at training camp, this week, he threw his helmet because he was so mad at the guys, and they just came off winning the Super Bowl. And here's, the greatest quarterback to ever play, our American football, threw his helmet to kind of get everybody's attention. And I think there's, there are times, and Brady's not that way, but there are times to do that. Stu, I'll just, my last question is, if you have somebody in the locker room, that's not getting on board, not being a team player, maybe a little bit selfish, even maybe a little bit isolated. What are some techniques? Because I think there's a way to get to everybody. I think that if you peel back the onion, everybody's different. Lee might need a pat on the back. I might need a kick in the ass, so I think that's important for the players in the locker room to also understand that too. Not just say, oh, he's a dirtbag or she's a dirtbag. They're not working out. Right. No, I think you should dive into that based on your experiences.
Yeah. So in my experience, the best way to deal with somebody is to not deal with them. Let the team deal with them. And what I mean by that is reviews. Now, there's not a lot that goes on with reviews, especially in this country, like reviewing a performance. And I'm not talking about a tactical performance. I'm talking about a mental performance. I think is one of the biggest key things that we don't do in this country, because it gives you so many answers. Okay, so I've definitely used it over and over and over again, where we review a game the day after and we sit there and all I'm doing is facilitating. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not, calling people out. I am asking questions, and open-ended questions. And, I'll maybe get, I don't know. So for instance, here we go. So the first time I was with the under-20s in Dumfries, and I think we played a pre-tournament game against Japan. And I think during that time, I can't remember the exact thing, but I think we took so many penalties that we only had we had someone in the penalty box, I think, for probably 10 minutes of the period, and obviously you're relying on your penalty kills then. And I didn't have to say anything. All I did was ask the question, what do you think about that? And bang, questions. And the team started saying, like, yeah, it puts us under pressure and stuff like that. And there's a way of reviewing that opens up so many doors. And I definitely used it, lost their head, and you do like the circle, like my attitude, my performance, their attitude, and their performance. Okay, so their attitude is that, say, I don't know, they didn't get a call from a ref. So what their action was to be selfish and go after that player, and then through that the referee has obviously put them in the sin bin. From there, their team's attitude is, we're on the penalty kill again, we've got to work harder. So then their action is, they've got to work harder. So instead of trying to put the puck in the net, they are now working on trying to kill that puck from going in their own, net. So it's like, you can't score a goal if you're constantly on a penalty kill. Well, you can in breakaways, it happens. We all know that, but statistically, it's not going to happen. So it's understanding that if you, and then it's a vicious circle, from there, and it could be a downward spiral. So, from there, say some of the team start having a go at this player, he has a go back, and then all of a sudden you're in a negative spiral down. Okay, so to review that, so say, you have got a cancer and someone that is a repeated offender, okay, you go through that. It can be really uncomfortable. I know. I enjoy being in uncomfortable situations. But if you say, well, what were you thinking at that point? And then that's it. I wasn't thinking. Boom, straight away. Next thing, okay, what difference do you think it would be? And this all goes ahead in front of the whole team, because then everybody understands that if they react in a way that is a negative, it has an impact on everybody else. It's not just an individual sport where they can go off and do whatever they want, and perform a certain way, even if someone's not meeting the standards. Okay, say they're turning up late. Okay, that's another thing. You sit down, you review, you say, what happened there? I was just, I just ran late. Okay, so their action was they came in late. And then you ask everybody else, so how did you feel about them coming in late? Well, I don't think it's right that, I'm always here on time. So, and their action is that everyone else does it. So then they learn that we can't, for everybody to be able to perform, we need to have that understanding of what's good enough and what's not. Now, that being said, if a player is not willing, say that cancerous player, okay, is not willing to be vulnerable or have humility to take responsibility for their actions, if they're constantly battling back and not willing to take responsibility for themselves, then you just got to cut them. And that's sport. If they don't fit, there's only a certain amount of time that you can give them, and that's on an individual basis as a coach to make that decision, is how long are we going to allow them to have a negative impact on this team, and then that's up to them to take the responsibility to say, look, because they'll know, because the team's told them, if you do that review system, that they're not meeting the standard, and like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's mentally, it doesn't matter whether it's your behavior, it doesn't matter whether it's on the ice or on the field or wherever you're doing. If they're not meeting the standard, they need to know that there's a responsibility and there's an action that happens after that, as a coaching wise. So, there is that reviewing system. Now, I've seen it two ways. I've seen it where a player holds their hands up and says, guys, I shouldn't have taken that penalty. I put you under the cosh. I'm really sorry. I'm going to try not to do it again. All right. And it's worked. The players come in, but then that player having the humility to say, put his hands up and say sorry and actually try not to do it again, has let everybody else know that that is not good enough. That is the standard that we all want to be at, and that we're not allowed to drop below that standard. So that's kind of a long, elongated way of saying it. But reviewing is a powerful tool in dealing with that. And like I said, if it's just working, unfortunately, you can't fit a square peg in a round hole sometimes,
Yeah. And that makes sense. And self-awareness, I think, is definitely that, and build team chemistry. But you also know, Stu, when you're paying an athlete, a salary to play, there are expectations, mm-hmm. and dependent on and same thing in business. There's businesses that put up with an employee because the employee can pick the right stocks, can hit all the targets, mm-hmm. and the employee might not be a great person or teammate. So part of that is incorporating that into what's the common goal, right? In business, it's making money. In sports, it's winning. And I think mm-hmm. when you can get people, even people that listen, I've seen players on teams that were a little bit outside of that team realm. But guess what? When it came to work, they worked, right? Did they hang around everybody else? No, they weren't like that. But when a player came to work, the player worked, and the team at least respected that part of them. So I think that's, we have to try to merge that. And, as an organization, whether you're a coach or the GM, it's how much are you going to deal with dependent on the talent?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does come down to that leader having the, how can I put it, testicular fortitude to hold that player accountable. And how much they hold that player accountable will determine what it says to the team. Now, I've done things where, so I was away with Slava and the under-20s at Great Britain, and we had a rule that if you were late for the coach, then the coach left and you had to pay for your own taxi to get to that place. Also, on arriving, you had to sing a song for that whole team, okay? And believe me, not many people late. Now, I'm going to let you know that me and Slava were late one day because we got the timings wrong. And guess what happened? Both me and Slava sang a song to that team because you have to be included in that. It's 100%. Just the way it is. But that's also a way of doing that without, if you wanted to say as a junior team and you can't cut players and stuff, because, let's face it, if the kids, they need to learn. If you can bring them back to do something for the team, so sing a song or do something else that's going to be a little bit out of their comfort zone, then guess what? They're gonna start towing the line, because they don't want to be doing that. And like singing a song, something fun like that, it's not going to hurt anyone. It's just a bit of a laugh, And guess what? If you don't want to sing a song, don't be late. Easy, So that there's ways of not being so, cutthroat, I suppose.
When we're talking about singing a song, what we're really talking about is removing ego from a situation, because ego is such a big part of this, right? That's where most problems in the locker room come from. It's from the ego. And, still, I'm a big believer that if you can create a team bond and a major majority of the team is included in that, people like you're discussing that maybe don't fit in, they won't survive in that environment. And like you said this earlier, the team will take care of itself. If your team is bonded, someone that is not willing to be part of that bond will not survive. But cutting them quickly or throwing them away quickly, I don't think that's always the right thing to do, as JB alluded to. You have to work with these people. You have to see what's going on. You have to talk to them. Why is this a problem? I think reviews are insanely important. I remember my first year with the tag. We keep talking about Peterborough, which is okay, shared experience, right? But I remember my first year with the Phantoms, Slava would get annoyed at me because I'm like, dude, we have to sit down and talk about this. Because I don't want to talk about that. I just want to do it. I said, if you don't do it now, they're going to commiserate later and it's going to become a problem. And again, I really annoyed him with that. I really did. In fact, if I was probably too critical at times, but it just goes to show you, if you let players commiserate, if they don't say it in the locker room, they're going to say it somewhere else. And what you don't want to do is allow parts of the team to silo away from each other and start to break apart. You have to nip those things in the butt immediately, especially at the youth level, the junior level, and even the semi-professional level. Again, it happens at the pro level too. All right. But there's different standards, but you have to have those uncomfortable conversations and make sure everyone is accountable to each other. That is how you defeat ego. That is how you incorporate everybody into that situation. So important to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I was saying, like, obviously from that situation, I probably didn't explain it right in the fact that, it's not a quick cut, it's a educational piece.
Totally.
It's an educational piece for that player. And like I said, it's down to the coach to understand, to allow how much, they're going to allow that education to go on. Is it worth it? At the end of the day, they're a coach or a leader or a manager. It's their job to make a decision on how long that education lasts.
Right.
That's
part of the job.
Obviously, yeah, absolutely. And, if you want to develop a person because you see talent, then obviously you've got to decide how long that talent is going to keep them from, getting the cut if they're not meeting that standard, and how long you're going to educate them for, and that's the difference. Like I said, it's not a quick thing. It's not a quick fix. However, you can get quick results from that review,
right?
But
I can tell you this before we move into the final question, is that we say this, it's very cliche, but hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I have never won with a team just because of someone's talent. I've won games before because of that, but I've never won a season or a championship because someone was so talented that no one else could compare. It's a team sport, especially in ice hockey. And I will rather have a team player than a talented player if that talented player cannot buy into that team system. It goes hand in hand. And again, coaches that are listening and players that are listening, if you are willing to sacrifice your team bond on someone's talent, you will not win. It does not happen, at least in my experience. So the last question we have for you is, Grit, the channel that we're on, our parent company, Pivotal Moments, are pretty into the idea of mental fitness and mental strength and breaking the stigma that surrounds it. So we ask all of our guests, what does mental fitness mean to you? How do you practice it and how important is it?
Yeah, so I'll try and be quick with this answer. So I'm somebody that's had mental health issues. As I alluded to earlier, anxiety, and because of that anxiety, I went into depression, deep depression. I had to have time off work and counselling and that kind of thing. And I think I went through it probably twice before I started understanding that, hey, something's got to change, and it's got to be my attitude towards my mental health. I've got to take that time to do something for myself. And, obviously in my line of work, it's difficult because, if you're not feeling up to it, you've still got to stand in front of 60 guys and, try and get them to do stuff that they don't want to do, and you've got to try and be that it's a performance. It is a performance every time you do it, and sometimes that can be incredibly difficult if you are having mental health issues. So for me, it means taking that time for yourself, and putting in the groundwork to help yourself. We all in this line of work because we want to help other people reach their performance, and the best that they could be. But if you're not in that situation yourself, where you're doing stuff for yourself to be the best person that you can be, it's very difficult to bring that out of other people. So a big thing for me changed. I used to put everybody else ahead of myself. Now I would 6 days a week, I am in that gym and training, and that is my meditation. That is my time away from everything else. I had no distractions, maybe a bit of aggressive music whilst I'm training, but that is my time for myself, and I've made that clear to everyone around me that time is my time. Apart from that, I'm willing to do as much as I can for other people. But in order for me to do that, I need something back. And, and I'm a massive advocate of showing that vulnerability. So being able to turn around and say, hey, it's okay. We all go through stuff, and people have just got to find their way. And if I can help people do that, then that's the most important thing for me for that mental health and that mental fitness, is just taking that time. Yeah.
Well, Stu, I think you just made yourself vulnerable there and throughout this episode. And I applaud you for that, because not enough people are willing to do that, especially in your line of work. It could just come across as being hard and gutting through, and I do it all. But you saying it right here to the audience, you have to make that time, right?
Yeah,
and it's important to make that time.
And if it's not working, you've got to be able to ask for help, and you've got to have an environment, and this comes down to the leaders and the management, where it's not seen as a weakness. Okay, vulnerability is a strength, and I think it's Brené Brown. I think she's American.
Right.
She's a
Brown.
huge advocate of it.
Yeah.
Brené, thank you.
Yeah.
Huge advocate. Vulnerability is power, because you understand, if you can connect with people and are vulnerable and you're open and honest with somebody, then that is more of a strength than having bravado and saying you're okay, because you can't do anything with that. You can't connect as humans, you can't do anything. And if you can't be vulnerable in front of that person, then there's issues there, and I think you have to be open and honest, especially for mental health, and just seek advice. If you need it, find it. And if you're around somebody in that situation, if you're around someone in that situation, sometimes you've got to find that help for that person. If you can't provide that, then there's loads of people out there that can, and it's incredibly important.
Stu, one of the things you just connected the dots on in my mind, and this is kind of cool for the listeners, is we talked a lot about not being afraid to fail. Well, vulnerability, which is a 4-letter word to a lot of people, you can't have both without each other, right? They both have to exist for the other one to be true. If you're not afraid to fail, you are also have to be vulnerable, right? You also are vulnerable, right? I didn't say that as eloquently as I wanted to, but you get the point I'm trying to make, right? The two things kind of work side by side. I think a lot of times when we talk about fear of failure, it's not a full definition for people. It's a process. But Stu, you have been an awesome guest. I have enjoyed every second of this show.
Thank you.
I've specifically enjoyed your accent, as always. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I just call you because I want to hear it. JB, any closing thoughts before I end the episode?
Stu, you were amazing, and thank you so much. I'll leave you with one story about the British military. So at West Point, every year there's a competition called Sandhurst, which Sandhurst is the British version of West Point, and there's a competition at West Point called Sandhurst, and it's basically a squad battle march and shoot, about 50 teams from across the U.S. military and of course England. And at the end, I ran the competition, and at the end, we hosted all the officers and non-commissioned officers from the other forces there, and a British female sergeant drank us all under the table. So I'm not promoting drinking.
Was she northern?
Listen, and then all I remember is we were
freedom tough.
We were passed out at the bar at the First Street Club at West Point, and she was making fun of all of us. So there you have it.
Freedom tough.
They do. It shows you Americans can learn from other countries too. Again, I mean,
100%.
I left that country as a little bit of a tea aficionado, and JB learned that he can be drunk under the table. So,
no. She drank the Brits under the table.
She drank the Brits under the table.
Not everybody. She was the lone person standing.
That's amazing. All right. Stu, thanks so much for being here. It was
You were
an
great.
honor. All right.
Thanks
So,
to you. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Loved it.
yeah, we did too. And that's going to do it for this episode of Win Championship Traits for Life, which is powered by Pivotal Moments. And once again, you can learn more about the organization and our channel Grit at pivotalmoments.org. Go there for more inspirational, entertaining, and educational content. For Stu Edwards and JB Spizo, I'm Lee Elias, and thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.